Hi all, my friend Dan requested a video about how I sharpen knives, and I thought that was probably a good idea, but unfortunately, like I usually do, there is some backstory that I gotta go into first. Sharpening a knife, in theory, is very simple, but there's some things I want to talk about. One, really all you're trying to do is make that knife come to a point again, and I'm sure you're saying, duh, Jay, I know that, but how do I do that? But there's some other things I want to talk about. In addition to getting it to that very fine point, I probably want to be able to control the angle at which I am sharpening it. I sharpen most all my knives at about 20 to 21 degrees, and that is from the center line to that sharpened edge. So if you talk about 21 degrees, then really it is 42 degrees inclusive if we're going from that side to that side, but we're just going center line out. If you are particularly anal about it, you can get like an angle guide, literally an electronic thing that you can zero out and then place on the actual sharpening stone or your angle guide to make sure that you're getting the angle that you think you are. But like I said, for most of my knives, 20, 21 degrees is what I usually do. And that works well for kitchen knives. For outdoor knives, I think if I was doing an axe or a hatchet, I'd probably certainly increase that angle quite a bit. If I was just going to do chopping or a chisel, once again, same thing. But 20, 21 degrees, if I'm sharpening a knife and I know it does not need any other specific or special purpose, that's the angle that I use. If you're talking about a fillet knife or something where you're doing very delicate work, you can certainly go to a steeper angle, like a 17, 18 degree angle. The problem with those is once you start reducing that angle, you decrease the knife's ability to resist chips or the edge rolling over. And in addition, if it is a cheaper steel, I have found that cheaper steels, for whatever reason, when I start reducing that angle further, they really do not like it. They are not a fan. So here I have a blank one, and typically what happens is if a knife gets banged up enough, right, like the entire front of that knife kind of just gets rounded down or jaggedy or maybe even folded over, and we end up with like kind of a blob of steel that doesn't really cut. With that, if I've got this problem, I need to have a sharpening system that is abrasive enough to take away material to get me back to this, and that's one problem. There are really a handful of priorities that I care about when it comes to sharpening systems. One is it effective? In other words, does it give me a sharp knife? If it doesn't do that, then I don't care, right? It does not matter. Two, it needs to be repeatable. In other words, it gave me a sharp knife one time, but when I try it again, if I can't get a sharp knife a second time, then that's gonna suck. Three, I need to have, for me personally, some level of control, like I said, for that angle. The cheapest sharpening systems don't really give you that, and maybe you don't care. If you have a utility knife that you just beat up, and you're trying to get a usable edge on it, maybe a $12 set of like crisscross carbides that you just drag the knife through multiple times gives you what you want. You use it again until it gets dull, drag it through there until either your $12 carbide sharpening system or your knife decides to just die. Then you buy new and repeat over. Not a big deal, but I like to have some level of control, and that's when I talk about angles. It needs to work fast enough for me so that it doesn't take all day for me to get a sharpened product. I've played with some sharpening systems that if the knife was exceptionally dull or beat up, you were going to be there a while, hacking at it over and over and over. So some level of speed is important. But that said, I caution you against going very high speed, because if a system takes a lot of material away on a knife in a hurry, you can also screw that knife up in a hurry. So there's a balance. Everybody's needs are different. For a high-end pro, they could use a belt-driven system that is a high-speed belt-driven system, takes away a lot of metal. They know what they're doing. They can sharpen a knife, set it down, get another knife, sharpen it again. For somebody who's a little more on the beginner intermediate side of the house, I don't know that's the best idea. And lastly, price. You could spend $12 on a sharpening system. You can spend over $1,000 on a sharpening system. Where you land in that range is really kind of dependent upon your budget, like your stomach for such things, how often you think you're going to be sharpening knives, and the end result you want. If you want a utilitarian edge that works pretty good and you can just refresh it whenever, then cheaper is obviously going to probably suit you better in some regards. If you want a mirror polished edge on that knife that is a specific angle that you chose and it didn't take you all day to achieve that, then probably you're going to want to spend more money. Because at the end of the day, you need to have a system that, one, has some abrasive quality enough to take away material to get you to that point, but obviously some options to get you less and less abrasive and more polishing type, either stones or media or belts to get you that more polish. It's been my experience that a more polished edge tends to last longer. So, like I said, I've got to get to this initial point and then I can work with it. And I'll talk more about that because I'm actually going to probably take one of those cheap knives and kind of destroy it and show you my system for getting to a more polished edge or even to an edge period. But if you have this, you want to get to this, you probably don't want to spend too much time or money getting there. And the level of expertise that you need to have in order to achieve that is also another issue. Freehand with a sharpening stone can work, and I've seen it work for a lot of people, but with no external reference for the angle of your blade, it is hard to be consistent. And so if we are very inconsistent, then what was a nice straight even edge can get very rounded and kind of like that because I'm not hitting the same edge every time. In addition, if the shoulders of this blade start to build up, I might actually have to cut away some of that before I can get to a straight, nice, even point. So there are difficulties. But like I said, my next video, I'll talk about that. I'm actually going to kind of bang up a knife and then I will sharpen it. I'll do some time lapse because it might be a little time consuming, but that's the basics. And like I said, simple, but you want to get a point and you want to be able to get back to that point again whenever you want without having to go through a lot of time, effort, or drama. Stay tuned for the next one, guys. As always, like, subscribe, share with your friends, help me out. And Dan, I'm putting it on you to get me at least 2 more subscribers. So I figure you can find your own victims. But see me again in video number 2. We'll take one of those cheap knives that I got. We'll beat it up and we'll fix it up. Thanks, guys.